Hello, and welcome to the Culture Core Podcast End of the Year Review. Today, I am joined by three guests. If you would like to all introduce yourselves.
All right.
I guess I'll begin then. My name is Nate. I go by NateTalksToYou on social media, and I mostly make videos covering social political issues.
We're getting a slight echo here.
Uh-oh.
I'll go next, though. Hello, my name is Justin. I'm a friend of Steven from high school. I was working in China until COVID. And I got the hell out of Dodge when that started. I've been in the United States since. That's my story so far.
Hi, I'm Alan. I'm also just a guest that Steven knows from his past.
Cool.
I don't have a YouTube channel.
All right. So those are the guests, and today we will be covering three general areas. YouTube in review, the news year in review, three major events, and then I think we're going to talk a little bit about our favorite video games. Not necessarily from that were released this year, but just that we enjoyed from this year. That's usually what I do. I don't know if you guys prepared, but anyway. So I guess just starting off with the YouTube year in review. I do this every year. It's always interesting to just look back and see what happened. The trend in the past has been YouTube generally moves towards what I like to call TV 2.0, which is basically more centralized, less decentralized, and I think that shows. There was a graphic that I am wanting. I need to find it. I was gonna put it up on the screen here so everyone could see. It compares the top 100 YouTubers from 2019 versus 2010, and it's actually an original post from Reddit. I'll go ahead and post that link. We're all in Discord, so that's kind of how we're doing our setup here tonight. I'll post it to the chat.
All right.
And that is the setup, and I'm going to share it in OPS here so people watching can see.
Oh my. Yeah, that is quite a transition over the past decade or so.
Yeah.
I think this is the inevitable fate of YouTube as YouTube has become more and more mainstream, as there's more of an audience to grow on there. Naturally, we're going to see people from Hollywood, from television, wanting to transition over here to get their audience. I mean, we're seeing what they call legacy media dying out as time goes on. And have to find new platforms. I mean, naturally, they want to make money. They want to get more viewers, so they're going to move over to new areas to get a following. So here we are. We're going to see more people like Jack Black, like Will Smith coming over to YouTube.
Yeah, I have subscribed to Jablinski. He does some interesting content. Those are more like personalities, though.
There's also the need for them to push YouTube Red, like their new TV package where they present you with shows that are only on YouTube, and they want to look more professional, so they're going to keep pushing off smaller people that make better content, perhaps, but simply
Do
can't
any of
get
you
a
guys
free
use
viewer.
that?
No.
I don't use YouTube Red. I mean, there are plenty of ways to get all of that content for free. I know that's
Right.
That's not the right thing to say.
I don't know anyone who uses that.
I'm sure there are some people who use it, but I'm sure they're mostly in the minority.
So
Right.
there's a couple of good shows on YouTube Red. Like Vsauce had a show called Mindfield, I think. Mindfield, which was pretty good. They put up a few freebies. That was probably one of the few good quality like YouTuber created shows on there. And I did the free trial for a month just to see what it was like. I never actually paid for it. But that was pretty much why I got it, was just to watch him and his content, which was pretty good. But yeah, the YouTube Red is definitely a sign of YouTube trying to get, turn it more into a TV-like platform, or like a cable-like platform, which is just the nature of it.
So I get the impression from the way you're all speaking about this, you view this as being mostly a negative.
It's, yeah. I mean, the whole benefit to YouTube is it's very innovative, and you have a lot of different unique voices that perhaps weren't heard before, and you get different perspectives. So
And the other issue is there's no other website coming in to fill that gap. Like, it'd be okay if YouTube wanted to become less innovative and have a more streamlined experience, just leading you to certain YouTubers. But there hasn't really been a platform to step up and replace what YouTube once was.
Yeah, so one of the things I was going to mention was another thing that happened from earlier this year is that YouTube usually has their rewind, but they canceled that. And I actually heard that first from you, Nate. You were the first one I heard that. I saw like you made a tweet about it.
I think it was the right decision. I mean, COVID-19 has been a catastrophe this entire year, and I think it's inappropriate for them to, like, have this like big celebratory moment when it's like, no, we should be more serious right now and not focus on that. Not to mention, like, the past like 2 or 3 rewinds have been like just so heavily downvoted.
Yeah.
Maybe we should just take a break from it, and they should try to like rethink what they want to present to the world. Like, what does YouTube mean to everybody?
Yeah, my question was, will they even have it again in the future? Just because I was reading an article about it, and I remember the writer said something along the lines of like, why would we have this if it's just YouTube's, like, the community's chance to dunk on their own content creators again, which is kind of a deceptive way to write that, because as we see with this graph, only 28% of the top 100 YouTube people on YouTube who make content, I guess, are actually YouTubers.
Now, while I know it does look kind of dark and gloomy to see all of these, like celebrities and television figures climbing to the top of the ranks, it's not as though those YouTubers from before no longer exist. They're no longer in the top 100, but they're still on the platform. They still get great viewership. At least quite a few of them do. And there are other people, other YouTubers who have grown in that time. I think it's natural that, as celebrities, as big media figures, once they hop over to YouTube, they're going to take those positions just by the nature of them being celebrities. But that doesn't mean that other people still can't go on YouTube and create content and get popular, even if they're not in that 100 rank.
I'd say it's harder than it used to be, but I think that's a factor of a few different things. Yeah. One of them just being that the internet isn't what it used to be. Like, if you first started making content back in like 2008, you had the edge of being one of the first on the platform, period.
First come, first serve.
Yeah, and I know people from that time who are still riding that initial advantage, I guess. But yeah, I mean,
there's also the question of monetization.
Yeah,
like how that works, because I think there's at least 2 channels that I know of, one being NerdCube and another one being Video Game Donkey. They've made complaints recently that they're having trouble with their channels, not so much because they're not gaining viewers very well, because they post so rarely that the way they earn money on YouTube has changed so much that they can no longer make their living easily.
Right.
So YouTube has an algorithm that is totally unknown to the many denizens of YouTube, and whenever they make changes to that algorithm, which from what I can tell they do it very often, the people who make YouTube videos, the YouTubers, they aren't informed. So very quickly, on a very short notice, for a lot of these YouTubers, they do it professionally. They don't have another job. This is their life and bread. Mm-hmm. So when the algorithm changes without their consent or knowledge, they can have a wildly different set of income. And the thing is, there's a difference between, now that we're seeing more companies enter the picture, we're seeing what's the word? I guess would be bargaining power. An individual YouTuber, when the algorithm changes drastically, they can't really adapt to support themselves financially, but a company has millions of dollars at their disposal. They can weather the storm easily. Mm-hmm. That's something else to consider.
I was going to say, at the end of the day, YouTube is a corporation like any other, and what they want above everything else is money. They don't care about the individual, they just care about the profit. And they're going to they're going to alter their algorithm in any way they can to bring in more revenue, to bring about new talent.
Well, that's the thing, though, is that like their profit model for... I mean, me and you are probably familiar with the Adpocalypse 1 and 2 that happened.
I'm very familiar.
That just totally changed how YouTubers had to, make a living, like Justin said. But also, like you also said, Nate, Patreon is basically how individuals have had to take ownership of their own livelihood, rather than relying on YouTube, which I guess YouTube went from being a hospitable platform to new content creators where they could, make a living, to kind of not really friendly to new content creators, where existing ones who had gained traction now have to rely on their audiences and say, hey, can you support me because YouTube isn't giving me anything.
It's friendly depending on what kind of content you're making. Back in 2010, when this graph shows like the 80% YouTubers, a lot of content was available. Like, I'm not sure how many of you know about my previous content. I used to make reaction videos to not safe for work content because it was, shocking and whatever. And you could monetize that kind of content, no problem. You could make easy money that way. Nowadays, though, anything that, is crossing the line, anything that's like too political, too edgy, too raunchy, you're not going to get any revenue from that. And that's because, as YouTube becomes more corporate, they want to have a clean cut look for the public to look at. And if you're putting out that hot stuff, that could mean that Pepsi doesn't want to be seen with you.
Right.
Which actually reminds me, do you guys get ads in your channels?
You guys have political stuff. A lot of stuff that I used to make doesn't get ads anymore.
It's funny you mentioned that. I actually officially made $100 off YouTube. But
Congrats.
Thank you. But they changed it so the only way you could continue to make money is if you got so many minutes viewed in the last 3 months. There were like a couple of qualifying factors that my channel just didn't cut it with. But some of my content might have ads on it. Most of it probably doesn't because there's no copyrighted material on it.
Recently,
so
like within the last month, that said that even videos that were not like meeting their standards and were not going to be monetized would still have ads attached to them.
I mean, so the point with that was that people who are smaller no longer can make money off it. And I remember back when they first made that decision, some people were making arguments like, hey, that little bit of money really mattered to my family and I because, it helped pay one bill or the other. Nate, do you remember that at all?
I do recall that. So, I didn't look into it too deeply, but my understanding was that if your channel is too small, if you're not pumping out content enough, or if you just don't have enough people subscribed to you or whatever, you can no longer become what you might call a YouTube partner, where you can choose to monetize content. But then along with that, to add insult to injury, YouTube can, of their own volition, put ads on there and not give you a share of it. And I mean, that's a bitch for a lot of people, but YouTube can do whatever they want unless you want to push for some kind of legislation to say that they have to give you money. But I'm not sure how likely that is to occur.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense.
And that kind of feeds into the mass censorship this year, and then that's been going on. And I know that some videos are targeted over others, and that kind of pushes people into these other platforms like Parler, which just kind of reinforces echo chambers. And I know that there's other platforms too, like Vimeo and KeepVid, but those aren't like the go-tos.
Those aren't really competition. From what I understand, Vimeo is more like if you're an art student and you want to put up your final project or whatever, that's where you want to put it up because I think the rendering is a lot cleaner. It's not going to be as compressed. But aside from that, it's not a YouTube. It's not for mass production of a bunch of reaction videos or stuff like that.
Right.
Well, I wonder what's holding it back. Why don't people go on there for reaction videos? Now, for me personally, it's just because YouTube's already there.
Mm-hmm. It's convenience.
It's so far, it seems like it's just convenience that I don't even check out Vimeo. People are saying that there should be a competition for YouTube, and Vimeo's there, but I don't even give it a shot.
There's also the reasonable fear of people that are don't really know the internet very well, may be afraid of new websites they don't know of. So word of mouth doesn't just mean people know about a streaming site. They might also fear that a website is not safe if they don't know it. Whereas everyone knows YouTube very well.
My grandma barely knows YouTube.
What did you say, Nate?
Can't expect her to know much more than that.
I was saying, are any of you familiar with a website called BitChute?
No.
Vaguely.
Yeah.
BitChute is a YouTube competitor. It's the same basic format. You know, put up videos. You have recommendations on the side. The problem with BitChute is that, for one thing, you cannot upload, I believe, above 360p. So, in this age where everyone wants to have like the sharpest video quality, that's going to be a turnoff for a lot of people. The other issue is that they brand as a free speech platform, so they are heavily deregulated. You can put up virtually anything you want, be it gory, be it violent, or whatever, and they're not going to have an issue with it. And
Sounds like
that has
E-Bomb's
made
world.
them a massive target for far right content. You find a lot of people with like neo-Nazi type ideology putting up their videos in there because they've all been banned from YouTube. And a lot of people that may have otherwise wanted to go on there to put up their content are now turned away because they don't want to be associated with the far right.
Right.
And a lot of advertisers don't want to go on there either for the same reason.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of feeds into like another question is when a platform is so big and so ubiquitous that like everyone, when you think of like a video sharing website, you just think of YouTube. At what point does that go from like it's a private company to this is used by everybody so much that it might as well be like a public forum? I know Twitter had that same kind of issue, although they still banned people a while ago. But it gets into like the whole freedom of speech thing. But yeah, I mean, obviously limitations are good. Like you shouldn't be able to put up gore or whatever. But like dissenting opinions, like one of the things that actually I was going to mention was that if you were to claim in your video that the election results were fraudulent, then the video would be taken down. Now, say what you will about all of the court cases that the Trump campaign brought and the credibility of those or whatever, but that's a common concern, and that's led to the creation of things like Parler, which I think is just more of a conservative and less extremist one than what you mentioned, Nate. But
it's kind of like a Trump Twitter. That's what Parler is.
Okay.
Well, for one, BitChute, I don't think it was always far right. Like there was a time when it wasn't. I remember a time when if you wanted to find a video that might be too graphic for YouTube, you might find a BitChute link for it. But I think it's quite interesting that simply the format of a video instead of text makes it so much harder for legislation to cover it, because it's very easy, like in a case against Twitter, and like whether or not it should be able to take things down or become political. It's easy because there's just text there, and it's easy to go over and run through. But YouTube can't even police itself. It has to use algorithms. It has to use flag systems from users. There's plenty of complaints of people getting flags that are inappropriate for their video that don't cover anything that actually happens.
You're saying the algorithm is too blunt an instrument.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the alternative is that you hire people like Facebook did, and they develop mental health issues. But it is a problem. Yeah.
It's all just a matter of where do you draw the line with content. Is sexual stuff going too far? Is gore too far? Is far right content too far? So yeah, it's really hard to like figure out where you put, and everyone has a different opinion. There's like no absolutely true answer. So where would you all draw the line as far as like what should be allowed and what shouldn't be allowed on YouTube?
I would say the argument of not being able to cry fire in a crowded theater, causing harm to others, which is kind of what happened with Alex Jones to an extent with the Sandy Hook thing. But yeah, that's where I would draw it.
No, I'd agree. All that I would add is whenever these bots detect something about denying the reality of COVID, or something about denying that 9/11 happened, just adding kind of like what Twitter does with Trump's tweets, just saying this is disputed. But otherwise, free speech is important.
Free speech is important. It's very interesting that you can actually mark videos as for children, yet usually you still have guidelines that are very strict outside that. I'd say certainly no nudity, and it's a question of like how violent can a YouTube video get. Like certainly you can't. You should be able to have mild violence to show perhaps like fake fighting or something. But I guess blood would be a good line to draw. Like you shouldn't have gore.
As for myself, my moral code is that I'm a utilitarian, so I'm all about trying to reduce suffering in this world and trying to maximize well-being. So I generally am in favor of free speech because we need to have the ability to have a conversation to figure out what is true and false in this world. But if there's an idea that's being peddled which is contributing to societal harm, then I don't think that idea should be expressed on a platform. So prime example would be anti-vaxxers. This has been a discussion we've had for a very long time, for decades now, and the science is settled at this point that vaccines do not cause autism. They're not going to kill you. Maybe in a rare situation you have some allergic reaction, but in general, they are completely safe. And yet, these people, these anti-vaxxers, have had this discussion time and time again, and they are not receptive to the facts. So at that point, we know that by them peddling anti-vax ideas, it's going to lead to more people getting preventable diseases like measles, for example, and some people will die. This is contributing to harm in the world. So those ideas are not worth keeping around on Facebook and YouTube, in my opinion.
So you wouldn't even allow them being uploaded?
I would, my position would be that, yeah, if there's an anti-vax video that's saying, hey, vaccines cause autism, here is our cherry-picked information, here's our false information, if that video is put up on YouTube, it should be taken down.
Especially, I think, with the issue at hand there, where it's, threatening to society, then yeah, I would tend to agree with that.
What's interesting is where you draw the line exactly, because this is that classical deontological to utilitarian argument.
Mm-hmm.
If you wouldn't allow people to upload videos about that vaccines are fake or that they cause autism, you could also say that someone's talking about how, gosh, what's another example? Abortion. Someone arguing that abortion is fundamentally wrong. Now, I am pro-choice, and I think that people talking about how abortion is always wrong actually spreads harm. The thing is, though, is that a very large portion of the American population believes that abortion is wrong in most cases, and I'll just leave it as summarize it as most Americans believe that many Americans believe that abortion is wrong in most cases. And when they put up videos saying that abortion is wrong in most cases, I think that they're causing harm. But I wouldn't say that they're causing so much harm that it's right to take away their freedom of speech, to limit their freedom of speech up to that point. I think I'd be interested to know, and this is impossible to know, where you personally would draw the line.
Well, one thing before addressing that head on is that according to Pew Research, this is from 2018, apparently 6 in 10 Americans say that abortion should be legal in all or most cases, and that number seems to be going up as time goes on. So it doesn't seem like as many people are against abortion anymore, and hopefully that'll continue in that direction in the future. But in regards to saying abortion is immoral or abortion is wrong, causing harm, I would say sure in some ways, but I'm not sure it's as black and white as the vaccines cause autism discussion. It's more of a subjective moral discussion rather than just like outright false information being spread. So I think there's a bit of a difference in that situation.
Sure. But there's my meaning is that there's thousands of cases just like this with so many different shades of gray.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, if a person was making an anti-abortion video and they were saying that, let's say, doctors who do abortion should be killed, or that if you get an abortion you're going to get autism, if they were saying stuff like that, then I would say that kind of content should be taken down because they're peddling just false information.
Okay.
Here's a question. Do you guys believe that the strategy of labeling a video or labeling a post as unproven information is viable? Because it seems as though it hasn't really worked as intended at all, as opposed to taking it down. Because there's always the question of, well, if you're suppressing ideas, you could just give people better context on the post or video. But it seems to me like that has only enraged people and made them less open to the idea of it being wrong.
Right.
Sorry, this is kind of bouncing back, but I've got the Pew Research thing on the screen now, and in 2019, 61% of Americans believe it should be most legal in most or all cases, and only 38% believe it believe it should be illegal in most cases.
Well, let's hope that trend continues. The thing is, though, that's
2009 is when they were the closest.
That's like a third of America, so that's more than 100 million Americans believe that abortion is in most cases wrong.
Sure. Oh, thanks, Nate. I just saw you posted that. But anyway, so to kind of draw us back to the YouTube thing, although this is a very interesting conversation, I guess I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the top 10 from this year, because it's interesting to see who changed. Would you guys want to do that, or would you rather continue talking about this for the time we have left?
I gotta be honest, I don't see a single channel on here that I watch.
That's the thing. I imagine political content makes up such a small fraction of the overall videos put up on YouTube. I'm pretty sure the most viewed like non-corporate content is going to be like a puppy video or like a cat video, or maybe reaction stuff or gaming content. But political stuff is a very small minority of what's put up on the internet.
Sure. One of the things I wanted to get to earlier today that I didn't get a chance because I got kind of busy, but I wanted to compare this year versus last year with the top 10. And I have this on the share document, but I'll post it again to the Discord just so you all can have it. But yeah, so Jeffree Star I know was on there last year, making $15 million a year. Again, I think it's a he. Yeah, cross-dressing. But I think that Popular Conspiracy Collection launched last year. Oh, that's an eyeshadow. That's not actually conspiracy, I don't think. But anyway, I have not really heard of Jeffree Star except when I talked about them last year, and I think they used to be on a different platform, and they made their popularity on another platform and then jumped over to YouTube.
I believe that Jeffree Star got his start on MySpace back when MySpace was a thing still.
That's right.
I think that he did a lot of like photography, selfies, that kind of stuff, and also a couple of music videos here and there. But they were more so like an underground figure before hopping over to YouTube. That's where they really got big, and then here they are on Forbes in their top 10 list.
Yep. And then 9 is David Dobrik. And I'm just kind of got to read through these, and I don't recognize them either.
I'm aging.
It looks like a family blog, which I know that like one of the first people to do that was Shaytards.
Oh, for Dobrik or a different person?
For like that genre of family vlogging. Like where you just vlog your family's like what you guys do every day, which is, I don't get the appeal of, but whatever.
But were you saying that David Dobrik is a family channel? Or...
That's what it looks like based off of the picture.
I think that David Dobrik, I know that in this GIF they're showing here, it's like a family thing, but I believe Dobrik is mostly known for these like big epic videos of him giving his friends a brand new sports car, having like a big ball pit in his backyard, that kind of stuff. But I think these are all his like close friends, and they're all hanging out together in a car.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think he was on a list last year. So it sounds like he likes to give. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then Blippi, oh god, I don't even know.
I've heard of this guy before. I forget how I came across this character, but he's kind of like the new version of Steve from Blue's Clues. He does a bunch of these like childish videos of him going into a hospital and talking to nurses, and yeah, it's children's content.
Okay, yeah, I know that one of the ones from last year, like the number one from last year, was like a toy reviewer.
Mm-hmm.
I forget it's like
Ryan, that little kid.
Yeah, yep, that's the one. Okay. Also, Nastia looks like a child, so.
Never heard of that channel before.
Looks like a kid channel. The 6-year-old Russian YouTuber goes by Nastia on her channel, which features her and her father playing with Legos, doing household chores, and explaining viruses. Okay? The videos are colorful, expressive, and don't feature much advanced language, making them perfect for global audiences of tots. There you go.
So it's not her. If I had to assume, this is actually her parents. Actually, Nastia's parents are the 7th most paid YouTube entertainers. So that's something. Nowadays, you can actually look at your kid and say, "You're gonna make me millions."
Well, that's always been, that's where like the child actors came from. Yeah.
Right, and this time you don't even have to sign them up. You don't need to audition them.
Huh.
It's never been easier.
Yeah, that's true. So I guess there's less chance for exploitation. It can just be for third parties to get involved anyway.
Well, one positive I'll say about YouTube becoming more corporate, you might say, in recent years, is that I remember back in like 2009, 2010, if you were a YouTuber and you were asking for donations like they do on Patreon today, if you were to ask people like, give me money through PayPal or subscribe to my channel, or if you were to monetize content or do sponsorships, this was heavily frowned upon back in the day. That was viewed as you being a sellout whore. That was you'd need to get a real job. Being a YouTuber isn't a real job. And now in 2020, being a YouTuber is more widely perceived as being a legitimate form of income. And I am happy about that, because that stigma of the internet is going away.
Of the internet being a fringe thing.
Yeah. Now it's viewed as like, legitimate. Anybody can do this. If you're making money through here, more power to you.
Well, you're not going to get health benefits through being a YouTuber.
That is true. Maybe that'll change in the future. Maybe some YouTube networks will pop up and offer some kind of insurance deal.
Well,
or we can just do Medicare for all. Hopefully that will happen.
That's on the table too. I was going to say, like, with entertainment studios, with like actors just make so much money, they don't really have to worry about the health insurance. I guess they can just pay doctors whatever they need to have. So, but anyway, Preston Arsmet, again, I don't know who this is. Looks like a gamer. He's got headphones on. Minecraft. Oh man.
Yeah, I've been looking through this list. Actually, I looked ahead a bit. Most of half the content, at least, is actually targeted toward children, which is very interesting in terms of who's actually getting the most views and the most money out of this.
That makes sense. It's like a free, easy way for kids to parents to just give their kids a phone and be like, hey, watch YouTube Kids. YouTube Kids was a thing for a little bit. I don't know if it still is, but that's the whole point of the option to select your content as kid friendly or not. So that's an interesting trend.
Babies don't use ad blockers.
True.
When a parent is busy or something, they hand their kid the iPad, and that iPad is running YouTube on a playlist. And when we all see ads, 5-second ads, we skip at 5 seconds every time. Babies don't. They watch a whole damn thing, and they'll watch a whole damn video without skipping, and they'll just nail every ad. They're just these guys' dreams. I'm sure that's why so many kids and babies make up so much of this list.
Well, funny you mentioned that, actually. I could be wrong about this, but I could have sworn maybe a year or two ago YouTube had a new policy where children's content cannot have ads on them. Maybe they just meant sponsorships, but I could have sworn they meant just advertising as a whole can't be on that kind of content because it's exploitative to a young kid's mind.
That'd be if they do that, I'm sure they would be shooting themselves in the foot. They out of millions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see how they would do that.
It would be a question of how they would define children's content. Like the creators we've seen on the list so far, mostly their content is made mostly for children, but they could argue, probably they really could argue that it's not, or at least other audiences could enjoy it.
Yeah, he also plays the violence-filled military shooter Call of Duty, which I love that, like, I guess adjective that they use.
Violence-filled. There's worse.
Yeah.
There's worse than Call of Duty.
Yes. Number 5 is Markiplier, which was actually also on the list last year. I think he might have moved up, which is interesting. He kind of makes some good innovative content. He took advantage of the I think the annotations that they used to have. Like you could like select your own story or whatever, which was kind of cool.
Part of that also probably comes from his that 1 year-long YouTube video channel he made, tying into his actual channel. He made content for 1 year every day. He made new content on the channel, and then deleted it at the end. That
Of the
actually
year?
just finished. No, I grabbed the actual date it happened. I think it happened last month.
So like
the end of November. They had created a channel in 2019 with the express purpose of creating a new video every day, and then deleting it after a year.
Huh.
That's like progressive modern art.
Basically.
Interesting.
And I think that was a large part of him jumping up in this list.
Okay. Cool. Well, PewDiePie doesn't appear to be on this list at all, and he was on it last year, but I guess that makes sense. Number 4 is Rhett and Link, which YouTube's longest-standing stars. They started Good Mythical Morning. Okay. Kind of familiar with these guys.
They're the oldest on the list, probably.
Yeah, it says...
I know they were big back in the day. They made these little like short film comedy sketches, that kind of stuff. But it seems like over time they've transitioned over to this more podcasty format.
Yeah, podcasts have definitely grown in popularity over the past few years, for sure. It says in February 2019 they paid $10 million to acquire Smosh. Okay, a sketch comedy YouTube channel. So I'm sure you guys are a little bit familiar with Smosh. They made the that Mortal Kombat video like a decade ago now, and then they ended up making comedy. But yeah, they apparently acquired them, so that's interesting. Number 3, Dude Perfect. I think he was on the list last year too. He actually moved up, I think. They just do stunts, it looks like. Number 2, Mr. Beast, Jimmy Donaldson. Don't know who that is. Don't remember him. If you guys do, his videos are a mix of stunts and humor. In the last 12 months, he froze himself in ice, went around a Ferris wheel 1,000 times, and constructed the largest Lego tower ever. So there you go.
I think he's very much like David Dobrik. Maybe there's a couple of differences here and there, but they're, to my knowledge, pretty much the same kind of content.
Okay. He and the cast in his videos all don it. Oh, they're sponsored by Microsoft, EA, Honey, the coupon app. Okay. But it looks like he just does a lot of stuff, maybe more stunt related. And Ryan. Okay, so he's still number 1. That hasn't changed. Ryan reviews this. So interesting.
No, this is the same review kid from before you were talking about.
Yeah, the same one from last year. So he has not lost his top earnings spot. This is an earnings list, by the way, for people who make the most money. I think both of the Pauls are off the list. They were both on it last year, or in 2018, I think.
Oh yeah, they had so much controversy around them. I'm surprised. I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
They're not hurting, though, I imagine. I mean, I'm sure you're all familiar with the recent boxing matches they've both been engaging in, right?
Yeah. Yep. Well, there you go. So now, I guess we can move into the news. I said we go for about an hour. We're about 40 minutes in. And with these, we can just kind of take our time. I have 3 topics: COVID-19, Trump loss, and the death of George Floyd, and all of the fallout that resulted from that. So given those 3, do you guys have a preference?
No, I'm good with any of them.
Yeah, let's
All sounds good.
barrel into it.
Okay. So COVID-19 was the story of the year. I doubt any of us would disagree with that. But that started back in... It hit the U.S. back in like early mid-March, distinctly remember. Justin mentioned at the beginning of the show that he was actually in China. So you probably have a really unique perspective on that. When did you get out?
I saw stuff shut down twice. Everyone was on Golden Week. So Golden Week in China is a week-long vacation. It's essentially government mandated. Everyone is on holiday. So we never had a chance, really. It's just a perfect storm. COVID starting all of a sudden, you could say suppression of people learning about this disease. And then Golden Week on top, where literally millions of people are traveling around the world, primarily in China and back. It's interesting because I was working in Beijing, and I had my vacation all finalized and ready.
What were you doing in Beijing? Or
Teaching English.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
teaching English, learning Chinese. And it was all set. My train ticket set, hotel set, going with a friend. And before we go, and this is late January at this point, manager tells us, "Hey guys," he brings us around a circle saying, "Hey guys, there's this weird disease going around. Just sign this, and then be on your way." And what that is that it's telling them where we're going and when we're going to be back. So China its government acts in a way that's somewhat similar to the United States, and as far as their localities down to the country, it's broken down into the province level, then down into the city and county level. Cities and counties have the ability to track and deal with COVID on a more individual basis. Provinces deal with it differently. Cities did too. So at Beijing, the city government mandated that companies have their employees tell them where they're going.
As part of the COVID restrictions.
That was the very start. That was the very start of the legislation and everything they would do to fight this disease.
And I think COVID started it actually started in 2019. That's why it's called COVID-19.
Right.
Right. Yeah. I think it came from a bat, right, from a market in around late November, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, if you read Chinese news, it's a lot less certain. I read a lot of Chinese news in English and Chinese, and it's fascinating every day how different it is from Western media. Of course, we all know that COVID started in China. It seemed to have started in China with a high degree of certainty. In Chinese media, there's been different reports of, hey, maybe it started on an American military base. Maybe it started. There was, and I used to know the story very well. I've done a lot of reading on it. But the summary is that it started. It may have started in the United States. They intimate, and may have spread to China that way. But at any rate, in Beijing, at this time in late January, as far as the Chinese people know, there's this strange disease, and it might have been the day that I left that they shut down Wuhan.
You left Wuhan?
I went through Wuhan. Our train went through Wuhan.
Gotcha.
And that was spooky. That wasn't a good start to the vacation. Because when we were going through Wuhan, of course, everything was closed. This was a train that made several stops. So I worked in Beijing, but I took a vacation to Guiyang, which is southwestern China. So I was basically traveling the belt of the country. Made a lot of stops, and one of them was Wuhan. At every stop, the doors would open and close. Some people would get on, some people would get off. But at Wuhan, of course, the doors remained locked. And Wuhan was interesting. It was a matter of weather and pollution, of course. There was this dense fog in the whole city, and going through it, there wasn't a single car in sight. There were these, of course, in China, the train lines are littered with metropolis. But Wuhan has all these giant skyscrapers, but not a soul in the road. Not a good start. When we got to our place, a lot of places were locked down. All the places that we wanted to visit, there were some temples, there were some old Western churches. Most of it locked down. We couldn't do anything. And my friend was a little more cavalier, glued to our phones. Getting updates, and we were in Guiyang for just a few days because we knew going in they closed down a whole city. This has never happened before, in recent history. This is bad. And so when I kept looking at my phone, they were shutting down some other cities around Wuhan, and then the day came that they shut down the whole province. So that's when you raise up your hands and throw in the towel.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, we're getting reports of Westerners being stuck in Wuhan. Now, my apartment's in Beijing. All my stuff's in Beijing. Guiyang, by comparison, it's a city of 4 million or something in the metropolitan area. But compared to Beijing, it's in the boonies. I don't want to be trapped in the boonies for however long. So
How far away
we
is it
had-
from Beijing, roughly?
Oh gosh, it's not quite in the southwestern corner of China, but it's a little to the north of the southwestern tip. So put a pin somewhere around in that area.
Would you say it's like the length of Texas or something?
More than that.
Okay.
More than that.
Oh wow.
More than that. Yeah. So okay. We got our money back, as much money of it as we could, and then and at the train station it was crowded, and that I hated that.
Yeah.
Because there was no social distancing at that point, and people wearing masks, because in China there was a cultural more, to wear masks in general for disease, but also for pollution. So they have a supply of N95 masks, but some of them weren't wearing masks, and but we got our ticket and got out of there. And then when we were back in Beijing, I come back to a totally different Beijing. When I left Beijing, everything was open. Was still open, even with these warnings of a strange disease. But when I got back, totally different Beijing, totally different. Much less people in the streets. It was a ghost town, and the restrictions have already come into place at that point. The Beijing municipal government. There were temperature checks in the subways, and there were temperature checks to go into my apartment.
Oh wow.
And over those days, I noticed and I realized it might not be a good idea for me to stay here. I was in contact with my Western friends, my support network there of foreigners. A lot of them are jumping ship, and I was thinking, I could stay, but I don't know how bad this is going to be, because we all keep in mind Tiananmen 1989 of how Chinese government may still respond to some sort of unrest. Like, how bad could this be? Try
like
look
something
into the crystal ball. How bad can it be? Will there be civil unrest?
Right. It could lead to that, is what you're concerned about, and then just
It's a possibility. Yeah.
I mean, there were stories of people who weren't following the restrictions, like they were throwing them in boxes and locking people in their apartments and crazy stuff like that. So
Welding their doors shut, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I was thinking was a disease, because this was purposeful. This is I've been to China before that point, but this was to be my first year of living a full year in China. So I purposefully chose an easy city to live in, Beijing. Nice hospitals. I have food allergies to peanuts and tree nuts, which is in like half of Chinese food. So I chose a city with great hospitals. But I was thinking, what if I got this disease? Are they going to have enough hospitals? And not all hospitals are the same. Hospitals are like a lot of Chinese society is very stratified in terms of quality. Are the good ones going to be filled up? Am I going to be in a bad one?
Yeah.
And so the question of civil unrest. We're in Beijing with the history of Tiananmen. So I got out of there, and come to America, where there was no restrictions of any kind, and it was a breath of fresh air. But then I saw it kind of all happen again, except without so much restrictions.
Gotcha.
It's because our administration has had a very different reaction to the disease than Xi Jinping's administration.
As I recall, it's just like the spring flu; it'll go away in the summer.
That's right.
Yeah.
You don't have to wear masks.
Now, if I recall, when you were trying to leave China, there was a concern about flights, right?
So that was nerve-wracking, because I bought plane tickets on short notice to get out of there as soon as possible, but they were shutting down borders as the days were going by, and that was tough, because I couldn't go anywhere. I was just it was my one-room suite, basically glued to my phone or trying to forget things on my computer, looking at the news of shutting down border with Russia, another day shutting the border with Mongolia. What got me kind of scared was when they began to shut down land borders with Hong Kong, because when they're shutting down borders with an autonomous polity but still part of China, that's let me know that these things are getting really serious, because that's where my flight was going. There was no direct flights from Beijing to to my hometown.
Yep.
I'd have to go through some other countries, and mine happened to be through Hong Kong, because they were shutting down borders as well as airspace, just access to airports. So they're starting to shut down the land border to Hong Kong, at least partially at that point. It would have really sucked if they shut down air access to Hong Kong as well, because then I would have had to get a whole other plane ticket, and nerve-wracking. There were friends of mine and friends of friends of mine who had their flight tickets canceled. One guy has canceled 3 times, because he would make a flight, and then that border would be canceled. Those flights would be canceled, and then he would have to buy a new one. I got lucky.
Oh man.
Yeah, I got from Hong Kong, and then from Hong Kong, I think, right to the United States.
That's crazy. It's just a first-hand experience of like where it started. It's crazy. But I remember the initial like lockdown and shock. People didn't really know what to expect at first. People thought it was like super serious, and like, you know, there was the concern of hospital overflow, and just people didn't know what to expect. So the reaction was understandably pretty, you know, like lock things down. Now, of course, there was the counter arguments of like, you know, this is hurting the economy, and there later on, as things become a little bit more clear about what the virus is and how, you know, the mortality rate, the spread rate, you know, just a better understanding of it, people begin to form, you know, they get to theorize like what always happens. But I remember back in March, like just things came to a standstill pretty much. And yeah, so do you guys have any experiences from the beginning of this back in March that you know, think might be interesting to share?
I wish I could, but thankfully my entire family's been pretty much COVID-free this entire time, and yeah, I'm very thankful for that.
That's awesome.
I've had a few personal ones, but I think largely in terms of like the American response, it's kind of surprised me that it seems as though people have winded down on how restricted they'd be. Like, I feel like there was a lot stronger acceptance of it for the first month or two, but
right,
it's only gone down in terms of how often people accepted it, which was surprising. I just thought since people got used to it, there'd be more of it.
Yeah, like kind of going off of what I said with like when it first started coming over, people didn't know what to expect, so they were a lot more compliant and just wanting to shut things down. But then as things became more clear and people got tired of being locked at home all day, and of course it became politicized, that's where things started to change. And one of the conspiracy theories that was my favorite, or I guess favorite in terms of like amusing, was there's going to be nano machines in the vaccines. And another one that's actually more serious, and could probably do more damage overall, is it's a business for Pfizer, which is a point, but actually compared Pfizer's earnings in 2019 versus this year, and it's less. It's like 48 billion this year versus 50 billion in 2019. Now, granted, the vaccines will start to become sold next year, but yeah, vaccines are going to become critical to getting us back to normalcy. And from the beginnings of it and all the resurgences and everything, I don't think anyone can deny that it's changed the world and how we operate, and it'll continue to. After this is done, the world's going to operate much differently than it used to. And that could be, from what I've heard, anywhere from between March and May of 2021. Frontline workers are just starting to receive the vaccines, and you get 2 doses, first one, and then you wait 3 weeks and you get another one, and you're supposedly immune. And then there's the whole new variant, which I'm sure you guys have heard of, that just arrived in Colorado. It's a higher spread rate. But
I did not hear about that, but I've heard plenty of people very upset that it's going to require 2 doses. Not so much that they expected a one-dose vaccine, but a lot of people suspect people will simply get the first dose and then not go back for the second.
Yeah. just not being thorough about it. Well, so I guess that's an interesting point. But
Well, as for myself, I do intend, as soon as it's available to me, I will be getting the vaccine. Because, I'm trusting the science here. I just want to get it over with and then no longer have to worry about getting it. I know that, like, how long does it take to become immune to the virus after you get the vaccine? Is it like a month or a couple of weeks?
so you get the first dose of it, and then you wait for it to take effect, and then you get another dose. My understanding of this vaccine is that it actually it's not like your typical vaccine where it introduces the virus to your body in a weak form so your body can learn to fight it. It actually gives your body the mRNA instructions for how to fight it. So it's different in how it actually operates.
And is this like a totally new form of vaccine we've never seen before, or is this model been used before?
I think it's
I don't think
relatively
it's ever
new.
been used. I've read that there's never been an RNA vaccine of this type before, which is incredible. Which is absolutely incredible that there's this disease discovered about a year ago now, and then within about a year there's an entirely novel type of vaccine to confront this totally novel kind of course, coronavirus types. Diseases have been around forever, but this specific strain is new. That's incredible. And I think it's incredible that people are poo-pooing the vaccine because it gives big pharma a lot of money. And I know that big pharma being a business is at its heart amoral, but what else could have produced this vaccine in a year besides an organization that has access to billions of dollars and genius kind of minds that Pfizer, for instance, has access to? It would be big government and big corporations. It's a good day for governments and a good day for capitalism in a sense.
Yeah,
as far as the vaccine is concerned,
they compounded the development timeline because there's usually like 5 phases to the development. Like they have pre-testing, testing on animals, and then they actually go through 3 different human testing phases. One with like tens of people, one with hundreds of people, and one with thousands. And one of the last phases is them actually producing it. But they've compounded it to where they start one phase when they're also starting another phase, just so they can speed up the process. And there were some companies that ran into road bumps and had to restart. Like I think Eli Lilly was one. And then I know Johnson & Johnson had a pretty big setback as well. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it's awesome and impressive that they were able to be developed so quickly. So usually it takes years.
Who's been even faster is Russia.
Yeah, I was about to mention that. Apparently they're already distributing their vaccines, but the efficacy is a question mark. The efficacy of their vaccine is a question mark.
I was joking to other people in dark humor that we can use the Russian people as our lab rats, but I read somewhere else that that the reactions of Russian people can't even be used to gauge the vaccine's efficacy. It's just not in a laboratory setting. So this vaccine, if it's a vaccine at all, which there's plenty of reason to doubt, is just a waste of resources. Just
right.
a terrible, just another crime for the Russian people.
Yeah. But the good news is that it's coming, and I think the next roadblock or hurdle will just be the people to, getting people to A, take it, and then B, being able to have them take the follow-ups. And I think that if people understand that, the sooner we can address the issue by taking this vaccine, the sooner we can move back towards normalcy, and the less we'll have to give up freedoms, which is the main, point of contention for most Americans, which, everyone... Anyway, so, does anyone else have, any unique perspectives on this from this year, or anything you think has impact, things that COVID-19 has caused? I think that just generally... It changed how the election was going to go, and then I think it kind of aggravated the the civil unstrife that we saw as well.
I do think had it not been for COVID-19, Trump may have won this year, because I think that his denial at the beginning of the vaccine being a problem, calling it a Democrat hoax at the start, downplaying the importance of social distancing and wearing a mask, I think that played a role in people losing confidence in him as our president. And obviously, from the get-go, Joe Biden was promoting the use of masks and following all the COVID guidelines. So I think there was a video I saw a while ago, I believe from Vox, and there was this guy who I guess has accurately predicted like every single election turnout for the past like 40 or so years, and he also predicted because of COVID-19 occurring that Trump would lose, and yeah, here we are.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting that you point out the stability factor, that people just want more stability in a time like this, and Biden provided that that selling point on his on his ticket, even though it's not a perfect ticket in any regard. Just kind of a mirror image, right? So at the beginning of the year, there's pictures of Pence going into a hospital. Everyone else around him is wearing a mask, and he isn't. And jump to the end of this year, and he goes on national TV and is saying, "Hey, I'm getting the vaccine." Kind of like speaking to that, which is, I think, a good thing. But that kind of leads into the Trump loss discussion, which is really his refusal to not admit defeat. I don't know. It's a very strange thing, and there's... You guys have any opinions on that generally?
You talking about how Trump is refusing to concede? About
Yes, that, and then just the uneven or disruptive handoff of political power, really.
Okay, I have a question, guys, and I wonder about this a lot of the time. So Trump, is he aware of the damage that he's doing to American democracy when he's refusing to concede as strongly as he is? But is he aware that he's causing damage to democracy, and is he hoping that, again, we're thinking very extreme thoughts, what if there was some sort of rebellion or armed coup that could keep him in the presidency and in the Oval Office? Or is he has no plans, he is just speaking straight out of instinct, he does not like to lose, so he just says off the top of his head, denying reality, I didn't lose?
I think it's that.
Because there's a difference there. One is having plans, and the other is just speaking from instinct. And it's hard for me to tell. I think it's instinct, but I'm not sure.
To speak to your point about him being willful about destroying American democracy this way, I think it doesn't matter to him. I think if he does know, I don't think he cares. But in terms of him actually handing off power, he has been resistant to it, and the Biden campaign has had to do a lot to get around them not being shared information. But in terms of him actually stepping down, I think he's come out and said that he will step down, but he's not conceded that he's lost presidential election.
What were you saying, Nate?
I was just saying, to follow up with what Alan was just saying, I don't think that Donald Trump really cares. I think the record shows that, considering the handling of COVID-19, that Donald Trump does not care about the harm that he's going to cause to people around him. At the end of the day, he just cares about maintaining his ego, his public image, and if that means some people get hurt, then so be it. I think what's going to happen is that Donald Trump is going to be kicked out of the Oval Office. Biden will become president, but Trump is doing everything in his power through lawsuits, through fake news on his Twitter account to sow seeds of doubt in the American public that he lost. And I think we're going to see for the next 4 years of Biden's campaign, through Biden's presidency rather, that Trump is going to continue this narrative that there was voter fraud, that there's all this corruption going on. Because no matter how many times he's lost these lawsuits, he keeps peddling the same message.
Right. Yep.
On a brighter note, it does seem to me, and I guess I'm not terribly up to current politics, that the rebellion is given up on, at least for now.
I mean, he doesn't have the backing of the military in any sense, so it's not going to happen. If you don't have the military, it's just you're going to be. It's not going to be pretty.
Did any of you have fears of a civil war breaking out after Trump lost the election back when the election was still going on?
No.
I was afraid of stochastic terrorism.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking
Scattered
about
terrorism.
specifically.
I know two people in my lives, one against Trump winning and one for Trump winning, both of which proposed to me that I should join them in the small enclave of resistance fighters. at some point.
People that you know in real life or just on the internet?
People I know personally that I have been in rooms with talking to,
Oh.
and that has
Wow.
really destroyed my faith in humanity. Because it's really a question I have to ask myself. Well, if I ever joined either of them, would I not be shooting at very much my other group of friends?
Hmm.
I mean, I still believe in democracy 100%, but this has definitely shaken my faith in the American people, just because I did believe that terrorism might come from this.
I mean, there was the incident that happened in Nashville, but I don't think that was related to anything with the election.
Yeah, to my knowledge, that was because the guy's a conspiracy theorist and he believed that 5G towers were causing COVID or something else. So he was mentally unstable, obviously, and he chose to carry this explosion out to express his feelings about COVID. I mean, about 5G.
Yeah, I mean, he apparently played us on a loudspeaker for people to evacuate, and no one died, which is good. But
Except for him.
Except for him, right? But yeah, I wasn't really concerned about a civil war too much. I don't see it.
Well, what I mean by civil war, more specifically, is I imagined that there would be mass shooters and individual bombers going out and trying to attack maybe majority Democrat locations to spite the election results.
It was, it's thinking back. It's interesting that there was no violence on election day.
Mhm.
That's kind of
Yeah, I know.
that's a little surprising.
Yeah.
I was very much worried for a little while there.
Well, I think that 2021 will definitely be better. I think that there's some good things that came out of COVID-19 as well, like just awareness of public health. And I think that in the past, and this is kind of an aside a little bit, but if people were sick at work, they'd have to tough it out and come in anyway, and there was just kind of like that mentality. But now I think that if people have like the flu and such, it might be taken more seriously. That's one positive thing. I guess just all of the development that's happened as a
Another
result
thing
of
is,
it.
there was a lot more protesting. Like, people could go out and protest since they didn't have jobs. They could actually make time to get politically involved this year. I do not believe the protesting this year would have had the numbers it did if COVID was not stopping employment.
That's
See,
true.
that's an interesting different constraints, because on the one hand, people don't have jobs due to COVID, so they have the time to protest. On the other hand, people know that there's this strange new disease that's killing people. They might not go outside. That was surprising me that so many people did actually turn out, and that they didn't observe many of them didn't observe social distancing when they were protesting. That was disappointing to see.
Yeah, I guess another good thing is reduce carbon emissions. People aren't traveling.
There were no clearer days in Beijing. My last days there.
Although part of that was because people were dying, so obviously human beings emit carbon themselves, carbon dioxide. I mean, so yeah, death led to a decrease in climate change.
I read this a while ago. You guys can confirm it or disclaim it if you've read it recently. Isn't COVID the third leading cause of death in the United States this year? It's in the top 5, I believe.
I believe so.
It's significant.
I am not sure.
Back to Trump and the election fraud claims again. Do you think that this will, in the long run, harm or help the GOP?
Apparently Trump is like polling high for 2024 already, but 4-year out polls aren't really too accurate.
Yeah, a lot could change in 4 years from now, and I imagine if Donald Trump doesn't run again, because he may just be too old and decrepit at that point to do anything again, I imagine he could promote some other figure to take his place and run on his behalf, and just kind of parrot the exact same kind of rhetoric that he was, but maybe in a more eloquent manner than Trump did. At the
Yeah,
same time, I imagine this could just lead to so much division. I mean, there are a lot of conservatives who are unhappy with Donald Trump at this point. They just want him to concede. So this could either embolden the GOP to work harder in 4 years from now, or it could lead to a full-on split in the GOP.
Well, I know there's a difference, or there's a divide between the more economically well-off GOP and then like the working class GOP. And if you go issue by issue, a lot of the latter, the working class GOP, will side with a lot of like Bernie Sanders points on, universal basic income, and things like that. But and that's also why a lot of votes were pulled away, I think, in some regards, from that genre of people. But yeah. I think
This year in 2016, do you mean?
This year. Like Andrew, you could see there were, in the Democratic primary, you were seeing a lot of different kinds of people that were not your typical establishment Democrats, like Andrew Yang, who advocated for that kind of thing. And he talked about how AI and automation were going to start taking away from the American workforce and people who do jobs like truck driving. And I think that had a pull with that crowd. And I think that his position on that is similarly carried by people who are not necessarily in the GOP. I think that Trump does make some points about, I guess, bringing dollars back to America. So I think there's an appeal there in developing America first. But yeah, there's a divide, I would agree, between the working class versus the more economically well-off Republican, if that makes sense.
That is part of the issue, because Bernie Sanders, a lot of his populist rhetoric appealed to millennials and Gen Z, a lot of people who are anxious about the economy and going forward in this country. And we're seeing a lot of people like Donald Trump appropriating that kind of rhetoric for a more conservative audience. So it's just going to be a matter in 4 years from now, trying to show people that the side more so of the Democrats, and hopefully their populism will win people over more.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because that's just today's news, isn't it? That Trump is on Twitter saying that people should get a $2,000 check, and Mitch McConnell not even bringing it to a vote beyond the $600 bill. We see right there that Trump has a relatively progressive streak that runs right up against what you could argue is the Republican establishment.
Yep.
And I've seen, and I read conservative forum and some pretty far right fora, and they do talk about wanting to split the party, but there's a great divide between wishes and making them a feasible reality. Because of course you already have the Libertarian Party as an alternative on the right, you could argue. But this is a first past the post voting system. It's the logical conclusion is that there will be two primary parties. I don't see it ever happening. And in the terms of Trump staying in the public consciousness, the political consciousness, I would want to say one more thing about that is he has a family. And when I see on these forums, people are actually calling for Trump's family to run for president. And when you see Don Jr. and Eric Trump, they're his spitting image in terms of image and also how they speak and what they say. I think if Trump doesn't run for president again, he will be first in line to push one of his sons for the presidency. And I think that's how he will last. He has the capacity to last in American politics for years, at least some years to come.
They're the new Bushes.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see. All right. So I guess with the COVID-19 and the Trump loss discussion done, we can move on to the last segment, which is a little bit of a tone shift. just kind of a preface there.
Video games.
Yeah, so top 3 favorite video games from the year. Who here developed a list, just out of curiosity?
I have a short list, top 3.
Okay. You got Justin. Anyone else? No, Alan? Okay. Nate?
I'm not much of a gamer, so I can't speak much to this.
You don't play mobile games like, I don't know. I keep seeing this mobile game ad on YouTube that's just particularly irritating, but they just seem to change up each week, like Viking War Clans.
I play a couple of mobile games. I play like there's a space pinball version for the phone. I also play a bit of Pac-Man, but like none of the mainstream stuff. I'm not really touching that.
That's fair. Yeah.
I picked up a game called Space Station 13, and I hated the fact that I did that. So I would not want to bring it up, and I don't want other people to play it.
Well, you just worked against yourself. What is that? What is it about, Alan?
It's an incredibly, drastically, overly complicated game where you are on a spaceship and you are making sure it keeps running. So you basically have to learn an entire alternate universe's rocket science, chemistry, and laws. Practice as lawyers, chemists, and rocket scientists.
Sounds like a
video game.
It sounds like real life in a game.
Yeah, it's an overly complicated science project. Literally, it started as a science project, and then it became a game out of that, and it's still a buggy mess because of it.
That's fair. I'm gonna put up a picture of the screen cap I found of it on the screen. It looks like a pixel game. Is
Yes.
that okay? All right.
It was actually developed by a 12-year-old as a science project, and then people like coders just started adding content to it, and then it became a small game. It's still run on the same.
It looks like it was made on Scratch. You remember Scratch?
Yeah, something similar to that.
Scratch is like a video game creating software, super simple. It's like drag and drop coding. If anyone was curious.
Don't play that.
But anyway,
Isn't this where that RoboCop MP3 song comes from? Or is this a different game?
Yeah, I think it's from that. This has such a strong following with coders because of how often you can just add changes to it and people will add it to the servers they're running, that a lot of people make fan content for it. So there's a lot of music tracks made.
all right. Justin, would you like to talk about yours?
Yeah, I took a peek at your list, Steve, and I have to admit that I made my list before I saw yours, but I'm going to steal one because I wrote it down first.
Yeah,
It's a
I mean,
game
you introduced me to this game, so.
You got it, yeah. I call it EU4. That's short for Europa Universalis 4. And speaking of complicated games, this is up there. This is a great game, historical strategy game. It runs from the year 1444 to 1821. That's 1444 with the Battle of Varna to 1821, the death of Napoleon Bonaparte. So that's, in the time frame of human history, that's the early modern period. And you can play as a wide variety of cultures and nascent nation states that existed around the world at that time. It's great and wonderful. I could talk about this for hours. And speaking of hours, let me check. Yeah, I have 1,600 hours on it.
Oh man.
It's great, and it's great because the game is deep in terms of strategy. There's an economy to manage, but it's a wonderfully complex economy system because there's taxes, of course, but there's also a trade system that pretty dynamic. It changes a lot over time, and you'll have to react to that accordingly. But there's also the matter of what you learn from it in terms of history and culture, because these programmers, and there's a picture, let's see. Yeah, you're going to be looking at this kind of map for a lot of the game. Right, because these programmers put in a bunch of actual historical events in the game for many different nations that existed. So you'll get something like the Polish Civil War, or the Habsburgs coming to power in Spain. These are historical events that are often hard-coded into the game, and when they occur at a specific date in a specific area, you'll get a flavor text will pop up. and it will tell you what's going on with the gameplay. But what's great is that there's text that's telling you about the actual historical event that is based on. And the world is split up into thousands of little areas called provinces. And you learn so much about world geography because you will march your army into some area of Central Asia. Originally, you'd have no idea where they're going into, but when you look over and zoom in on that little piece of land they're moving into, you see, oh, Tashkent. What the heck is a Tashkent? But no, it's a historical city that still exists to this day. The cities that still exist, and down to a very small granular level that they split the world into. And you get to see religions, how religions change over time. The Protestant Reformation occurs. Sikhism starts in India. And you get to see how cultures shift and religions change over time. I learned so much. It really can help you if you're really into it. It can actually help you with your history tests. It can help you with when you watch Jeopardy. It's great. It's a wonderful game.
If you can overcome the initial learning curve, which can be a little bit,
cliff.
Yeah, it's a little bit intimidating, but it helps if you have someone to help you out learn the ropes. And you could definitely start with something simpler, like I don't even know. I know that when a similar Paradox makes this game, right? Or no?
Right.
Yeah, Paradox. And they also make Hearts of Iron 4, which is a modern like World War II era game of the same caliber. And they make a couple others like what's the space one? The one that happens in space.
I don't. Stellaris.
Stellaris, yes. But what's that?
Yet to play that. They also made Crusader Kings 2, which a lot of people also play. Same deal, just different time period. Same deal as EU4, just different time period.
Right, and with Hearts of Iron 4, I know that you can turn on the AI to handle a lot of the processes that you might otherwise have to handle yourself. So that's also might be a little bit easier to start on, and it's more modern, so it's a little bit more like you can use tanks and planes and guns and stuff. So it might be easier for people. But anyway, what else you got?
Then is Halo, Master Chief Collection. Alan gifted it to me. Thank you again, Alan.
The only thing my game taught me was how to make homemade pepper spray.
No, I've seen that game that you were talking about, Alan. That scares the hell out of me. What doesn't scare me though is the other game on my list is when you're talking about mobile games earlier, Nate. This is what I was thinking of. Mine is just a cell phone game, Disney Tsum Tsum. It's ridiculous. I needed a third game on my list, so that's what I put down. It's just a mobile game. It's basically Candy Crush, I guess. It's a freemium game. They'll never get $1 out of me, but that's just the best thing to get your mind off whatever it is. When you just need to get your mind off for literally 5 minutes because it's a timed game, just play a game of that, then back to the task at hand. Huh. But no, that's the love. The love is EU4. Disney Tsum Tsum is the workhorse for just to get your mind off work.
All right, cool, thanks. Nate, did you have any childhood games you played? Anything nostalgic? I don't know.
Yeah, I was interested in I was more of a gamer when I was a teenager than I am right now. All I really play regularly right now is Brutal Doom, which is like a modified version of the original 90s Doom game. And along with that, I play GTA Online. But yeah, when I was in elementary school into my teen years, I played a couple of games. I was a big fan of the Spyro the Dragon trilogy. I was also a fan of games, a lot of platformers like SpongeBob, Battle for Bikini Bottom. Those are some of my go-to games growing up, and yeah, I still have nostalgia for those games today.
Are those?
I'm interested as to why you play less video games. Is that because you just have less time, or you have less interest?
I guess it's a variety of factors. One thing, I know that if you want to keep up with the whole gaming industry, it can be costly to buy all the newest games. Isn't like $60 per game?
Yeah,
one thing.
As a standard.
I think now it's going up to 70 with some games.
For the brand spanking new ones, but you can definitely still be into games and, wait for good Steam. I don't know if you. It sounded like the games you mentioned were, I don't know what was Brutal Doom on.
Brutal Doom is a free-to-play online game. You can download the mod and then just begin like getting all the different. They call them WADs. Like that's the file name for when you put it into the Doom software and then play it.
Okay, so like
Yeah.
mostly computer games.
Yeah, I do play that quite a bit. And yeah, I do get a couple of fuck Nintendo. I get a couple of the emulators for all the retro games from time to time.
Nice.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you're a PC gamer, Steam has like sales every other month. It feels like, and you can get a bunch of games really cheap.
Funny enough, actually, I did recently. Someone gifted me the new Among Us game. So if any of you play Among Us any time in the future, I'm up for playing with you.
Awesome. I think I,
Cool.
yeah, that one. That's really popular now. I actually do not have that. Do either of you guys?
Yeah, I do. It's like $5 on Steam if you want to play it. I think on mobile it's actually free, but it has ads.
Ah, yeah.
I
Well,
don't mind plugging that game though, because if you like watch the Game Awards, their studio is actually 4 people, and it's those 4 people at the Game Awards.
That's awesome.
It's really sweet that because it's obvious like basically a Flash game in terms of complexity, but the game loop is just so much fun that even that studio of 4 people can make it big.
that is neat. All right. That wraps up our agenda. We talked about YouTube's year in review. Talked a lot about the top 10 earners of the year, how the platform's changed over the past year. Some ways good, some ways not so much. It's harder for people who are new to get a grip on the platform. More mainstream outlets, it's easier for them, harder for others. But it also, being a YouTuber is becoming more of a mainstream thing, where it's not a legitimate, I guess, career, you could say. And then we talked about the news a bit with COVID-19, some initial stories, one from up close and personal, where it started in China. And then we talked about some conspiracies that resulted from that, just the ramifications of it in general, both good and bad. Mostly bad, but and then we talked a little bit about the big political year it's been, possibly where that'll head in the next 4 years, and then video games. So,
By the way, do you add chapters to your streams after they're published?
I typically don't. I had a friend in an old stream say that if you add timestamps, it actually hurts engagement. I don't know if that's true or not. But I could, for sure. That's something I could
I mean,
do.
it wouldn't surprise me. Like, not everybody wants to hear every single topic, so if you can give them a timestamp to where to find this discussion and whatnot, it would make it a lot more convenient for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I do that sometimes, but not always. But I can do that for this one. You guys got anything else noteworthy from this past year that you can think of?
No.
Oh, I'm 26 now. I have my birthday on the 22nd of November.
Hey, Mazel Tov.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
And today was my first podcast.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Hey, thank you, Steve.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thank you for listening, and we'll see you all next time.